Cikgu Hub presents Cikgu Speaks.
Cikgu Speaks is a Malaysian teacher podcast who aim to help teachers learn, connect, and grow. And today we have.
Cikgu Yongru.
Hi, I'm Melissa.
Hi, I'm Cikgu Janice.
So the topic today we're going to talk about will be your first month as a teacher. So yeah, Melissa, maybe you want to start first?
My first month as a teacher. Wow. So I was trained to be a history teacher, and I was very excited to prepare for my first class. So I had all my materials. So I printed. I still remember my first lesson. It was for Form 2 class, history, first chapter. So I printed all my materials. I've got a lot of what they call this. I printed pictures. I even printed sets of games for my students to play, because I wanted to make history very interesting. You know, people say history is very boring, but I wanted to change. I wanted to do something very different. So came the day. I packed all my things. Okay, the bell finally rang. So it was my turn to go to the class now. So the teacher staff room was at the bottom and my class was upstairs. So I walked up, and what I noticed was, as I was walking towards my class, it was getting very quiet. So usually, and it was, you know, as we change period, right? You know, when we go to school, usually classes are very noisy. But I was finding it a bit weird and I was walking to this class, it was actually quite quiet. So I was like, never mind, I still walk, you know. And so I reached the class. When I reached the classroom, what I saw was students, the boys, they were sleeping on the desk and sleeping on the back. So that's why it was very quiet. And so I walk in the class. Oh, you know, I was very, very nervous because it was my first day. Okay, so I put all my things on the desk. Okay, and then I started to greet the class. I say, "Selamat pagi, class." Nobody stood up. The only person who stood up was the class monitor. Okay, so he stood up and he asked all his friend, dirilah, cikgu sudah datang. Then after that, I say, "Selamat pagi, class." I said again, nobody cared. Nobody responded except for the class monitor. Okay, so I said, okay lah, no problem. Sit down lah. So I said, okay, sila duduk. So I started teaching. First, I was on the board. I divided the board into 3 parts. That's what I was being told. One part, you divide the blackboard into 3 parts. First part is where you want to show your content. Second part is where you get your students to do the work. And then third part is maybe you give the homework. So I started that. I divided the blackboard into 3 parts. And then after that, so as I was writing, write. I was writing the day, the date, and the date. And then after that, the title. I still remember this very clearly. As I was writing, suddenly, a chair was thrown right in front of the blackboard. Oh my goodness. It was really, really nerve-wracking for me. And I turned my back.
What kind of chair it was?
It was a wooden chair.
My God.
No, those kind of, it's a wooden chair. So the boy, one of the boys, he took the chair and he in front.
This was secondary school, is it?
Secondary school. And they are 14 years old. So you imagine how loud it was. Of course, the chair, it didn't hit me. It was quite near, I was here. So I told you, right, I divided the blackboard into 3 parts. So I was more to the left side. But the chair flew more to the middle part. So it didn't hit me. So what happened was a fight broke between 2 boys. Okay? All because they just wanted to, they were fighting because of a textbook. Okay? So after that, I didn't know what happened, how the fight broke or what was the fight about, I didn't know. But all I know was it was so angry, it was so fast in a split second, the 2 boys fought and then the chair flew in front. And that's it lah. I knew that all my things, my materials that I was going to prepare for the class, it will not happen. Definitely won't happen. So the monitor, I told the monitor, call the Cikgu discipline. So we called the discipline, Cikgu discipline to come. So he came up, and then after that, he brought the boys down. So everybody in the class was already in shock. Including myself. I think I was more shocked, scared than the boys.
It could have hit you, right?
It could have hit me,
Yeah.
but it never dawned upon me that it could have hit me. What I worry most at that point was how to get back to the lesson. That was my concern. It already happened like that. The class was in like I would say very kelam kabut already. So as a teacher, we were trained to keep your class in control, manage your class well. But on the first day already, it didn't happen. So I felt very scared and worried in the sense that how am I going to get this class back in control? That was my very biggest fear. So I told myself that there is no way I can ever proceed with the lesson that I have planned. No way. How am I going to teach sejarah in this kind of condition? A fight just broke. The 2 boys were sent to the discipline. Everybody was in shock, especially me. How am I supposed to continue this lesson? So I told myself, you know what? I'm not going to teach this lesson. I'm not going to teach, but I'm going to talk to these boys, these students, and get to know them. So I put away all my lessons and I told them, you know what? You come here. I knew that I had to be in control, because if they see me as one who was afraid, if I were to cry in front of them, which I just had to pull this face, this persona that I am in control, and I have to do this. So I told the students, you know what? We're not going to learn history. Sit down in a circle, push all your tables and chairs aside, sit in a circle and tell me share with me about your hobbies, what do you do, and about your family. So that was my first day of school, which I still remember very clearly. It did not happen what I planned, and also I think I was really flooded with fear on my first day of the class. That's my first day for you.
And that's just the first day.
That was
Right.
just the first day. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just the first day.
I guess for me, it wasn't as traumatic.
Mm.
Like, because I taught English in school. So I think when I went in, I thought I would be teaching English. Then there was this class the first couple of days. This class, I first went in. And then when I said like good morning, then they were very joyful. So I think I was very fortunate to have very kind students as well. They were very joyful. They were like, yeah, good morning, teacher. But really, that was all they speak in English.
But where was this school?
So this was a kampung school.
Okay.
So then the kids was like very excited to say, oh, good morning, teacher. And then after that, all sat down. Then when I started the lesson, then they're like, oh, cikgu, yang ni bahasa orang putih. Tak payahlah, cikgu. Then because I was from PJ KL, so then they were like, oh, cikgu dari KL, kami kat sini ada KL juga. Tak apalah, tak pernah pergi KL, tak apa. So I think the kids I had was more of like, they were very complacent to what they have, and then therefore anything that is outside of their comfort zone, that's very different. So that is like, tak payahlah. But bahasa Inggeris tak ada orang kat sini cakap pun. So it was quite, I think very eye-opening for me at that point. And then that point I was like, oh, if they cannot do all this, how am I going to teach them what I wanted to teach them? And then also I think there was a lot of like trying to figure out what I expected versus what the reality is lah. Cause like I also did I was also a teacher trained, like I did a 4-year program. So then when I went into schools, there's also some assumptions I had. But when I went inside, I was like, oh, I thought I was going to teach secondary school level. So now, so I ended up teaching a lot more like pre-K or like primary school level and be okay with that as well.
And how old were your students?
My students range from 14 onwards.
So what were the expectations that you had that were mismatched?
So
You
I think,
mentioned there was a few, right?
so imagine like you go in the class thinking like, today I will show you videos. I will like show you all the fun things that I've learned about the language, right?
Okay.
And then when I went in, it's like, good morning, teacher. That's a great sign. Next
Yeah.
thing I know, yeah, cikgu, yes, kami tahu yang tu.
Tak nak cakap bahasa Inggeris.
Bahasa orang putih ni, no.
Wow.
Yeah. And then like every time I would talk about something that is a bit different from where the community is used to, then they're like, oh, tak apalah cikgu, yang tu terlalu jauh sudah.
So you conducted your class in Malay. You conducted your English lesson in Malay.
So I had to at certain points, and I think at that point for me as a new teacher, that was very difficult because when even when I gone through another like month of teacher training, we've always been taught to teach the language in the language.
Yeah.
So
that's what I
then
thought.
I thought that was like I felt like a failure because I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
But
Yeah.
there isn't any other way, right? Based on the situation.
Yeah. But
How could you teach English in English when they don't know English? But you cannot expect the 14-year-old to at least have some basic
Yeah,
English, but they don't,
Mm.
right? So like, is that to say that the training that you get is not targeted, right? It's every teacher gets the same training in Malaysia, but different parts of Malaysia would need different kind of training.
Support, yeah. I guess I will also, as I now think back, right, I will also think of it more of like what I learned in uni then was more of the theories. So like I think so like how to teach, what are the structures that you need to put in place. Then when I went to school, that was quite another scene altogether. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I know all these things, but I don't know how to do it in this way. How?
Yeah.
Mm.
I guess that's very similar to my situation,
Yeah.
my experience. Like we were taught to deliver, how to deliver the lesson. And that's why I wasn't prepared when that scenario happened in my classroom. Like what happens when the lesson doesn't go according as planned? Or what if children are not emotionally ready?
Yeah.
For example, like the students who broke up a fight, and then after that suddenly it caused everyone to be so like kelam kabut.
Yeah.
I wasn't trained, or my teacher preparation at point did not prepare me for that kind of situation, and that's why I was left very scared.
You were thrown to the wolves right away.
Correct. So I guess that's what they say. You learn on the job.
Yeah.
But I guess
But what
to me it's like, what? Learn on the job on the first day I come to school? I was like, oh my goodness. So I guess that was why I felt that feeling, and I
Yeah.
understand where she's coming from. Like that extreme fear, because we were not trained to face and manage this situation.
And I guess there's also a lot of like a bit of guilt, right? Like
Yes.
you're not doing the right thing. So like I will also remember back when I was teaching English in mixed languages, then I will also feel like, oh no, this is not the right way to do it. I was taught to do this, but I'm like defying everything that I've learned to do this instead. So I think that was also that sort of like fear and guilt of like, why? Yeah.
Teacher guilt.
Yeah.
We're not giving the best to our students.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was necessary,
Yeah.
right?
It
So
works.
it would take time for you to
To be
realize.
okay.
Yeah. How about Janice?
I think I resonate with the both of them. I was also a language teacher, but my problem is I was given the remedial class whereby most of them are Chinese or Indians, and I couldn't speak a word of Mandarin or Hokkien or Tamil back then. So I went in thinking I need to teach Bahasa Melayu in Bahasa Melayu, but they don't even understand a word that I'm saying, and some of my students even can't read ABC. So that is something that's beyond my expectation. I would thought that when you're already in secondary school, you can get your ABC, but a majority of my students cannot even read ABC. So there goes the first lesson. It's also something that I really struggled with in the first month. I have some of my students who actually call me like traitor, anjing, because they feel like I'm a Chinese but I couldn't speak their language, and here I am teaching them another language. So that's where I really resonate with it's very technical. You go in, you plan your lesson, you execute your lesson.
Yeah.
But how do you make sure your students can connect? Or how do you make sure your students don't see you as an outsider? So there's something that we were figuring out, I think, for the first half of the year at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
for me lah. Yeah.
So was it in the urban place or a kampong place?
It's actually in an urban place, but how we categorize at school was like in an urban poor area lah. It is in the central of, let's say, Penang, but it is in a very poor community. So that's why we thought that, oh, it's in the Penang secondary school, shouldn't
I
have
think
any
the
problem.
school, because we taught in the same school, so the school is categorized as an urban slum, meaning to say that you are urban but you are trapped in poverty. And most of our students that we were teaching, they mostly come from families who work in the market. Their parents are mostly hawkers, and the schools, the demographic is such a way that they are popular for gangsterism, absenteeism, and so these are things that we weren't informed
Yeah.
when we were first placed in the school. So it would be good, we were thinking back, if we were informed that this is the type of school that the demographics that we'll be dealing, maybe it could have changed or helped us, to do better.
For example, like a shift in mindset was when we started teaching, my idea was my students, how many of my students will get A, for example, will pass,
Yeah.
will master the language. 6 months down the road, I just need my students to behave well in my class, and that's success for me already. So that is something that we weren't prepared for. It's all about you teach to make sure they pass and they get A, but not so much like molding them to be somebody that is respectful, behave well in school and discipline, things like that. That is something that's often overlooked.
So how long did it take for you to sort of have this shift?
For us, I think we were very fortunate also. We have like a mentor in school to guide us to navigate that. So for me personally, it takes like about 6 months for me to get that trust and build that relationship and shift my thinking into, for now, I just wanted to create a safe learning environment in my classroom. Make sure, for example, my class is clean and the students took part in making sure the class stays clean. Because I remember there was once I have somebody who came and observed my class and it was in a mess. And then he says, you focus so much on delivering your lesson, but overlooking how your classroom is at the moment. You have rubbish everywhere. Your students are, unorganized. And how can you expect to do a lesson when you're in such an environment? So that was something that I focused on. I shift from getting them to understand the lesson, but to making sure that we are together in building that classroom where you don't suddenly pour water on your friends or pull their chair or hide their books or make sure that there's so many rubbish in your classroom. But we make sure that before we start the class, you're all ready. We are a family. And I think in the last 6 months only, I can actually properly teach them and get them to learn, or even open a dictionary and find the meaning to, let's say, the meaning of a Malay word that I'm teaching them.
So you mentioned that you had a mentor. So are all teachers being assigned to a mentor, or it's just a natural thing that?
So actually now all new teachers do have a mentor. It is a structure that's put in place.
But back then, during your time,
Yeah, we were given a mentor,
Yeah.
a school mentor.
so the mentor is from the same school.
From the same
Yeah.
school is a senior teacher who
Mm.
comes from the same subject. So, for example, if I teach sejarah, then my mentor assigned to me will be a senior teacher, maybe ketua panitia, basically the head of department of sejarah. Then she will be my mentor, or the teacher's mentor.
So I take it that the mentor played a role in your shift,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Yes, because I think what works also, besides having friends, we were in together, right? So we can share and
Our stories.
share. Share and exchange ideas. We also have somebody who has experience on the ground, who have already maybe taught in that school for 5 to 10 years, who know how the students are. They don't really get better every year lah. So they know how they can guide us on how to navigate it. No?
And I think for me, thinking back, is also one thing that my mentor was just sharing was just like, actually, if you cannot start teaching a child if they're not ready lah.
Yeah.
So you need to be where they are and sometimes where they are is not where you want them to be.
You can solve the human issue first before you actually even go into
The real lesson.
the lesson of this particular subject that
Yeah.
you want to deliver.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I guess that's what's really missing in the teachers training for us in terms of how teachers are trained, because teachers are trained to deliver, but it's always missing the human factor that we never take into account the community or who these children really are before you get into the classroom. So thankfully in the school we were given mentors who will help us, who we can go back and speak to. But most of the time it's really on the teacher's effort to decide.
So I came from an all boys school, right? So I remember every time if there's a new teacher who's gonna come, we'll be like, this is gonna be fun. It's like, I was part of the problem lah, right? So bullying teachers and everything is like,
So
You
now
know,
you
if-
know how we feel.
yeah, so it's like the goal is to see whether she cries or she doesn't cry, right? It's sort of like, let's see if you can make her cry today. So that being said, like it's as though that, I guess now I get to see the other side of it is that teachers are trained to teach the whatever subject, but they were not taught to handle a class, and they will just put into place. So what is the part that's actually lacking? Like, how could we make it better for the next generation of teachers?
I wouldn't say that teachers are not trained to handle a class, but I think what is missing, like what I mentioned, is that humanizing element. Like, how can teachers be trained to connect emotionally with the students, or even like before you teach, for example, assess the background of these children before you get into the classroom. So the objective, I think what can help young teachers is that, or even future teachers or getting into the classroom, is that the first 3 months, I think, is to really use that period to build that rapport or that relationship. I think relationship should come first even before you get into the teaching part, which means that you like to bully teachers, right? You mentioned you like to bully teachers, isn't it? Okay lah, you want to bully teachers. So as a teacher, assess. If you know that these students like to bully you, then get time to understand them. Why they like to bully teachers? Use that 1 or 2 weeks when you're in the first in the school to get to know these boys who like to bully teachers. Understand where they're coming from. Maybe because they came from a broken home, for example, and they relate that experience, or they want to exercise that authority to someone whom they see as vulnerable, like a new teacher. So I think these things has to be
Attention seeking also.
attention,
Lah.
correct. But as a
to
teacher,
get a response from the
yes,
teacher,
correct.
right?
But as a
Yeah.
teacher is, we know that students like this exist, but how do we handle you? How do we manage even your expectation as a student or me as a teacher? So I think these are very, very important skills that teachers can need to learn to actually really handle this, I would say.
So it sounds to me like, there's this leadership element in this whole thing. You're kind of actually leading an entire class of people.
I think leadership is, like we all know, leadership is about empowering, motivating, and inspiring. And I think these 3 elements, or these 3 things, I think would be quite important for teachers to know.
Or
But
building that relationship within the class, just like what we shared, right? In the first 6 months, we focus on not only our relationship with the students, but the relationship between the students in the classroom. Because we can have good relationship with them. At the end of the day, if they are still not okay with each other, you still have shares flying around. So imagine you're like the boss of a company lah, but you're the boss of a classroom with 30 employee after you. But how do you make sure that on the day-to-day everybody survive up until maybe the bell rings and we all go back happily together? Be one piece.
So, Jenny, what I'm hearing from you is that teachers are expected to become a boss of a company immediately from the first day they enter into the job, right? So, I hear that three of you are really tough and you'll overcome it, I don't know if every single teacher actually get out of it, or will they actually, shrink, or just, I think I have some experiences where the teacher didn't know what to do. So all they did was read out their notes and then wait for time up, and then they would go. They would just leave the classroom, and then I would remember, I don't even remember which one, but I will just remember that this is a very non-memorable teacher, and the teacher was just here to read out the lesson plan, and yeah, that's it. Right? So perhaps, what are the support that they can get, or like maybe you guys can share some tips to the new teachers out there who's listening to our podcast.
I guess I do agree. Like maybe I just share a little bit, like when we first face this problem, right? Because I have the option of I should just quit teaching. I cannot already do this, or maybe I should just teach. Nobody's gonna listen anyway. But I guess the opportunity and platform that were given to us is something that enable us, for example, me and Melissa, to continue teaching up until our 5th year. I never expected to teach up until the 5th year. And some of the support that we get, like I shared just now, is my mentor, who actually encouraged me to try new things, to let me know that even as a new teacher, I can make certain decisions that I need to make for my classroom, not to be bounded by the rules in the school or to be what is being taught. So my mentor gave me, that was the first point, like giving us the autonomy to like make certain decisions, to like what Yongru say, change how we teach. Doesn't have to really follow the rules or what is being taught in uni. So support like this, letting teachers know that they can make certain decisions, and when they face issue, the management is there to help them to go through it. Is something that I think new teacher would really appreciate. But maybe Yongru and Melissa can also share more.
I think, just going back on that point where teachers have voice, we also face the situation where as young teachers, our voice, I would say, is not taken very seriously.
So because you were saying that you had a mentor that gave you the green light, right?
Yeah.
So not every mentor will be like the mentor. Just stick to the plan and just do it, lah.
Correct.
Right? That's what they will tell you, and
Exactly.
then like what you're gonna do.
Yep.
Right? I guess it comes to this part where you
Yes.
mentioned about the voice.
Correct. So I think as young teachers, one of the biggest challenge we find is that sometimes when we have ideas or we want to share, and school being so hierarchical, it's very difficult for us to put that voice forward. So for us, for Janice and myself, I think we saw this as quite a big issue, like teachers not having that voice. We realized that, or having that voice is very important, where teachers are trusted, and that was very much missing. Not until when we went for a visit to one of the schools in a kampong school in Johor. So this school had very similar background to us, to the school that we were teaching also, where the children were from the Felda settlement. Most of the parents were also not well-to-do, very similar to us. But what we saw was very different in the classrooms and the teachers that we spoke to was, in the sense that the teachers really own the work or own the classroom. So they were running this program in the school where teachers are given that platform to take charge of the classroom, where teachers, they had this concept called like teacher leaders, mini teacher leaders in the school, where they will champion certain initiatives or champion certain projects in the school. And that somehow really opened our eyes that a school that has similar background to us can also be like this, can change, where students come to school, they had good attendance, and the school actually had one of the best PMR results at that point of time in the district. So that really gave us idea and the inspiration to bring this idea back to our school, because we had so much problems with classroom management. We had so many problems, wanting to motivate our students or to bring change. So we then, when we saw that, we came back and we shared with our principal. And we told the principal that this is what we really want to do for our school, because we really care for the students. We really want them to come back to school, learn, and this is a school that has successfully done it. I think we can do it.
So after your trip, right, such an impactful, fruitful, interesting trip that you got to visit this school that gave you the idea. So with all this newfound enthusiasm, you're gonna go back to your school, and I'm not sure how, but how did your school administration or headmaster take it, right? Takkan he or she want to suka-suka let you come and change the way they rule the school.
Yeah. So I think at that point of time we were very fortunate. We had quite I would say, a very understanding principal, a principal who welcomes our idea. But the principal at that point of time was also going to leave.
Yeah.
All right. So we then decided to wait for the new principal to come. The initial principal was very understanding also, but we knew that he was going to retire, so we waited for the new principal to come. So when the new principal came, we wrote a proposal, writing down what we want to do, coming from the visit that we saw, what was the issues that we faced. All right, so we prepared, and when she came in, I remember the first week she came in, we went to see her. Janice and I, we went to meet her and told her about our problems, the challenges we face, and also what were things we suggested that we hope to implement in the school. And the first few questions, I still remember the first question she asked was, who is going to fund this? Or who's going to pay? Because school got no money. We all know government school has got allocation issues. Who's going to, she said, who's going to, fix the pay for the classroom? Who is going to, get all these extra stationaries? Because every month, every subject is given an allocation, and this is not sufficient. And I think what was even more challenging was it was only for the afternoon session, because my school had got 2 sessions. So we proposed to say, no, let's do for the afternoon session first, because afternoon session was a smaller group, and the students were I would say, more, how to say, more easy to influence because they are younger. All right. So she said, we cannot use the school's budget just only for 1 session. It wouldn't be fair. Other teachers will not be happy. How are we going to do this? So these were some things that she mentioned, that we saw there was a how to say, like, resistance in that sense. So we were very brave. We said, okay lah, if funding is an issue, we told her, don't worry, we will solve the funding issue. Okay. So at that point of time, we were very fortunate. We had friends who were doing this thing called crowdfunding. So they taught us how to put our stories on the internet, okay, and then go and crowdfund. And our friends were very supportive. So we talked to friends and family. We used our siblings, our friends to share all our stories on Facebook. Share on Facebook, share on this online platform, the crowdfunding platform, for people to donate. So I think in within 2 weeks, we managed to crowdfund about 5,000. I still remember the amount, 5,000, and we used that 5,000. We spoke with our PK Petang, the administrator for the afternoon session, another very supportive leader. We were so happy, so fortunate to have her. She said, okay, 5,000. She called her contractors to repair all the whiteboard, but in one condition, has to be very cheap. And the contractor was very good also. Remember this uncle, because we say, for students, we have been there. So he gave us very good price. I think for 6 classes or 6 whiteboard, he charges about less than 1,000. So we managed to do that. And then the remaining money, we actually used to buy projectors. So every 1 session we had, so for afternoon session, we bought about 3 projectors so that every teachers can use the projector for their class. And of course, we had a principal, the afternoon session administrator was so encouraging. She even came out some money, her own money, to buy supplies, printers. And the school that time, when they saw the teachers coming together, the principal saw that, it's going. These teachers managed to do something. Then they started giving us a little bit of fund from their recycling project. And that's how, after a conversation with the principal, who was not very positive, and we then did something to show that, no, don't worry, this is what we'll do, because we really want our students to come to learn. And that's how after that it became a school-wide school-wide or community work. Slowly, it involves the parents. Parents came to help students to repair the chairs because we were seated in wooden chairs. Parents came in to bring in recycling like newspapers, books, so that we can recycle and sell to fundraise for the school. So it started off that way, and we realized that when the teachers that was the most important person, the teachers felt that wow, now community is coming in, and these little things that we are doing started from from the both of us. Now they are doing it. There was a sense of ownership. There was really a sense of belonging and a sense of unity in the school. That has
It's
really
like everyone
changed.
cares.
Everyone
People
started-
cared about what you
Yes,
do, not just
everyone started to care, and I guess that is why, for us, our key lesson when we observe as we look back is leadership is very important. And leadership is not about, I would say, teachers as leaders is not about how many people you can influence. I wouldn't say that, but it really starts from how you want to solve a problem that will eventually get people to follow and influence by you. And that was our biggest lesson as we look back. That all the teachers needed was someone to show them that it can be done, someone to guide them, this is how we can do it, and ultimately someone that we can work together.
I guess, like, from what you said, right? Teachers being in the system from the start all the way through, from the experiences and the hearsays that they have, right? It's hard to believe that something like that can be done, right? So sometimes, not to say no, I think there are many cases as well that they manage to do it, but generally a lot of them lack this kind of experience. And I think given you, Melissa and Janice, you all came from an industry outside of education, and then you came in, I think Yongru as well, right? Yeah, so that prior experience gave you a foundation and an experience to like sort of write a proposal and to even have the network, that is out of a teacher circle, right? That has crowdfunding people and everything, right? To bring the village together to solve this problem. So, like, I guess for those who straight away went into teachers college, all their friends are also generally mostly teachers.
Understand.
What can they do, or where can they seek for such a support, or are there any other learning avenues for their development as a teacher or beyond?
What do you think, Yongru?
So I guess there are a lot of avenues, and especially even more now. I think it's more of trying to see what you need and find different solutions for it. I think I really resonate with what Melissa said, that like leadership is really thinking about what is a problem that you want to solve. And for every teacher, really, you are solving problems every day. And how do you do that every day? And how do you find different resources, maybe outside of your norm, to be able to do that?
Actually, just to share with you, I think teachers these days, I would say, if we're to compare, the young teachers these days have actually a lot of opportunities. I think realizing, learning, the universities are also learning from experiences of teachers like us. And to say that young teachers these days actually have a lot of, I would say, networks and also opportunities for them. For example, I think we have these teacher trainees who come in to experience. We even have very special programs for teachers, to understand what teaching is all about.
Okay, so that was quite an amazing feat that you just shared just now. So I think the three of you actually came from other backgrounds and you entered into education. So I would assume that you gathered certain kind of resources, like, first of all, the network that you have, like you have crowdfunding friends, you have a group of people to support you and everything. So generally, teachers went to teachers college, and then their friends are also generally other teachers. Not to say they can't meet other people, but generally mostly right? And also the ability to come up with a proposal of such and in such a scale is something that is considered a little bit extraordinary. Given what we know today, what are the resources that I think, having said that, for a new teacher who's just started and they have these ideas, if they're looking for support, or could you recommend any resources that they can go to in order to like brush up on their abilities and also potentially make some professional development and networking?
What do you think?
So I think there are a lot of different organizations out there that is providing all these services, but it's also very important to find organizations that know what's happening on the ground and be able to pivot that as well. So identify organizations that would be able to connect what's happening in real life and also happening, like having the theories, bring it in to make that connection.
Well, I think, yeah, just to share with you, like that's one of the reasons I think why, when we were teachers, we realized that belonging, having this network or this support system, that external support or that community was very important, because that somehow, kind of like really give us that ability to do what we did for the school. And that's what we aim to do with Cikgu Hub. So Cikgu Hub, as what the tagline says, learn, connect and grow, is basically, its motivation primarily is to really help young teachers to navigate that difficult days. We faced through that difficult days on our own, and we were also very fortunate to have each other in school and some of the other teachers. So we realized that, wow, having that support system is really key. And going beyond that support system to do things is really a bonus, like what we were able to do. And that was and this is basically the whole idea of why we wanted to do our Cikgu Hub, where we create this whole large community for teachers to support them, not only in terms of getting resources or professional development, but I guess, hearing our stories and our experiences that we have gone through, I think that's very, very important for a young teacher who is stepping into school. Teaching is really I would say, a very tiring job. Very tiring if we were to compare even to working in the corporate, because teaching takes up emotionally, physically, and mentally. It might be only, 3 to 4 hours a day, but that consumption of that time and that energy is beyond, I would say, is really very tiring. And therefore, we want to support teachers. How can, let's say, if a teacher who wants to have an idea in a classroom, where can they crowdfund? Who can they speak to about crowdfunding? That's where the Cikgu Hub community comes in, because Cikgu Hub is by teachers for teachers. And let's say someone who wants to write a proposal but never have that idea, who can they speak to? We want them to think of the teachers in Cikgu Hub. For example, people like, you subscribe, for example, how do we, learn all these things together?
I guess thinking about what you shared just now, right? Like if we are thinking about our own stories, the most important thing for us at that point that helped us throughout along the way was really because we had a community, we had opportunities to connect with whether different stakeholders or learn from different people to be able to get to where we are. So I guess for Cikgu Hub is also being able to create that community so that teachers who may not have had the opportunities that we had can also come together to do that.
So for listeners, right, so how can they take the first steps to be connected to Cikgu Hub?
I think the first step is very simple. You can just join our Telegram group. Second one, follow us on Instagram. We're on social media. And of course, we have a platform that you can subscribe, to stories like this, to free resources that we be uploading, that we have created specially to support teachers in the first year. And in the platform, when you subscribe, you will also belong to a community of teachers. For example, teachers who are there, so you can have questions. Let's say if you have any questions, for example, want to write a proposal, How do you do that? You know, you can just post that question into the community platform, and teachers who are there will be able to address it.
So you're not just teaching them how to crowdfund. I think it's more of like bringing the teachers together,
Yes.
right? And leverage on each other's strengths and everything, and
Correct.
build this network and help each other
Yes.
become better.
Correct. So it's not just about it's not a platform just to watch videos or hear stories, but it's also a platform for you to get connected. For you to get connected and for you to share your experiences that will help to edify and encourage other teachers.
Okay, so thank you. So I think before we end the show, we gotta wrap up. Share a word or two to our new teachers. Some words of encouragement, right? Yongru, can you start first?
So I guess for me it's more, there will be difficult days and there will be really, really good days as well. So on difficult days, remember that that's not forever. Yeah.
I think my key message is never give up. That is the most important thing. And if you see a problem in the class, don't sweep it under the carpet, but address it. And I think the third point for new teachers is always try to, if you think that your principal or your leaders are not listening to you, I think don't give up, but always be humble in humility. Ask and speak to them and see what they think. So I think, as new teachers who wants to survive or even want to bring change, my key message is always be humble lah. Don't think that you are smarter than anyone else.
So I think I want to jump in there.
Yeah.
So I think the key really, right, is to be able to build relationships.
Yes,
with,
yes.
Whether with your peers or your senior teachers. Like if an idea that comes from you may not be well received, does it need to come from you?
Yeah.
Can you share the idea with someone else who can help you get to your end goal?
Yeah.
That's
good,
interesting.
Janice?
I guess maybe just to summarize also from what Yongru and Melissa shared, what I also wanted to share with the teachers is like the word community is very important. So being a teacher is not just about creating community in your students, in your classroom or in the staff room, but also how can you be part of a community that either you receive help or you can also, be somebody to support other teachers in their journey. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So if you like what you're hearing in this podcast, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the subscribe button and press on the bell for the reminder. And thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode.